All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. It looks like from looking at everybody, it's morning for most of you, although people who are watching this recording may be different for them. Um, I wanted to let you know I am recording, if that's okay, and we're going to make that available. Kathy, I'll get the MP4 for you if we want to get that out, or if people request for it. I know we've had a few people that have already asked for a recording, people from Australia. So, so let me just jump in. First, let me share my screen. That'll help. Okay. Can everybody share the screen? Can everybody see the screen? Thank you for everybody. It looks like everybody's on mute. If you have a question as I'm sharing, don't hesitate to ask it as we're talking. Feel free to unmute, ask the question. This is informal. If you'd like to put that question in chat, I'll pick those up later on as well, and we can go back to that. So very informal. Any questions as we're going through the data, don't hesitate to stop me and we can talk about it. And then there will be a brainstorming session at the end where we will talk about research opportunities and ways to use the data. So here's the agenda for today. We're going to start in the U.S. Obviously, this is not just, as we were joking about earlier, this is not just a U.S. Situation. So we'll look all over the world. I'll bring in some comparisons and some lessons to learn, and then some good news, and then any way we offer to help in any way we can. Oh, one thing I was thinking, mentioning, or thinking about, the data that I'm releasing to you right now will not officially be released to the public until 2 o'clock today. So please don't send a screenshot to anybody and get me in trouble. I think from now on, I'm going to do these in the future on Fridays, so that I don't get data out there before the public sees it. The way we release data to our customers on Wednesday afternoon, and then the industry on Thursday afternoon, just so the customers have opportunity to digest it. So you guys are catching it in the middle. So don't share any screenshots, or if you're talking to an industry, if you're talking to somebody this afternoon, don't mention any numbers. Good. Okay, let's jump in. Here is US right now, and just to get you used to some of the data that we're looking at. First, it's RevPAR. So most of you, everybody knows that's revenue per available room. That tends to be the number that everybody looks at, because it's a mixture of both occupancy and ADR. And this looks at it just for the US for the last 7 weeks. 8 weeks actually. Now you can see last week, so that was you see the bar April 4, okay, negative 81.6%. So that's where RevPAR is right now as of last week. So that would be the week ending Saturday. So that would be Sunday through Saturday. The Saturday would be April 4th. So we're just, we're looking at data. This is daily data. So a lot of times when you see STR stuff, you're looking at monthly data. Well, obviously that's too old when you're going through a situation like this. You've got to be looking at daily data, and we can make that available to you as well. So bad news is we're at negative 81%. The good news is, believe it or not, is it didn't go down that much farther than the prior week. So it was negative 80 the week before. I wouldn't have been surprised if it was close to 90 this week and it was only negative 81. We don't know what's happening next week. Obviously, this is a total U.S. number, so this is looking at New York and California, but it's also looking at Nashville and Atlanta all over. So this is the composite. We do have the cases in there as well. Everybody good with that? Yell if you have any questions about understanding what's on a slide too. Just to emphasize, last week was the worst week in the history of the hotel industry. So it's never been worse. Negative 81. Just to compare that to the very worst week After 9/11, negative 38. The very worst week in 2009, that during the economic recession, negative 25. So, and some industry people have basically said, hey, you know, take two of these and multiply them together, and that's what we're looking at now in terms of RevPAR. We're expecting the negative 81 to be somewhat similar next week. If you interpret this by room demand, this is basically daily data again. Normally during a week, the hotel industry in the US sells, you know, close to 25 million rooms. Last week, we were at 7.9, so that's about 1 million rooms a day. Nevertheless, that's a huge reduction. So that's interpreting in terms of demand. And remember, demand is rooms sold. If you break this down by class of hotel, and STR has 6 different classes of hotels, you obviously see the ones that are really crushed are the luxury and the upper upscale hotels, the resort hotels, the big business convention hotels, you know, mid 90s is where they're at, and then it goes down from there by class of hotels. If you look at that from so this is RevPAR percent change, big negative number down. If you look at it, same thing in terms of occupancy, you know, another way to view that, luxury and upper upscale hotels right now have less than 10% occupancy. That's what we're talking about, very minimal business. Here's another way to look at it. This is by location type, and we use the STR location types. You see the big ones hurt. The urban hotels shut down, you know, I mean, no business. Resort hotels, the same. And this just shows a look by location type. If you look at it by markets, look at the, you know, market, look at the occupancy for markets. Most of these markets are used to having a 70%, maybe higher, maybe lower occupancy, and look where these are. These are our top 25 markets. Some of them, you know, less than 5%. Now, some of course, you take a look at New York, you know, you do have a lot of healthcare professionals in these hotels, and that, you know, that's that does help in some areas, but you see where the markets are. Another important principle about this, which is no surprise, look at the group business. Basically, no groups, no conventions, you know, negative 94% when it comes to group business. Not the transient is that much better, but obviously everything's canceled. And you might wonder, well, how do we get 6%, you know, how do we get 5% of group business? We're thinking that's cancellations, and that's not even accurate. If you look at that on a market by market basis, and anybody interested in group and transient, great kind of thing. You know, this talk about a research opportunity, that would be really cool. But look at the top markets, you know, group, and this is RevPAR percent change. So you see a lot of these top markets, you know, gosh, we're in close to 100. You know, no market is higher than that. And I think that New York will probably be, you know, it's blocks of business, so it could be healthcare, you know, booked in blocks. So healthcare professionals booked in blocks. Make sense? Group business way down. Our forecast obviously revised, you know, for 2020. The main thing to look at here is the demand. We're looking at negative 50 in the neighborhood of negative 50%. The good news is, look at 2021. You know, I mean, we could be looking at a significant bounce back in 2021. I was joking with one educator who was saying, hey, our kids who are getting ready to graduate, you know, they're sort of, you know, they're pretty pessimistic. So what this school was thinking about doing was offering a 5th-year master's program, 12-month, you know, intensive masters, you know, give them a good price for it, let them stick around for another year, and then graduate in 2021 when, you know, the industry's in the midst of recovery. I thought, wow, what a creative idea, and you know, and a service. Another school was thinking about a summer leadership series, because all their kids that were that were getting ready to go on internships this summer, they know none of them are getting work. So they're planning a special summer leadership series, which I thought was a neat idea, a way to keep, yeah, and related to coronavirus. Let's look at, you know, managing hotels in crises situations, leadership kind of thing. So anyway, offsite. Obviously, so that's basically US. Everything we've looked at is US. Now, there are not a whole lot of international people on the call, but I want to give you a quick global perspective, and we'll run through these slides real quick, and slow me down if I'm going too fast, and I'm cognizant of everybody's time. Okay, this is the world, and it's occupancy percent change, so it's daily data, and it's back January 12th. You can see in January 12 a little bit of things going on here in China. Now let's look 1 week later. We beginning to see a lot more red dots when it comes to occupancy and a concentration in China. One more week, now we realize, hey, there is an incident, and China turns red. Now here, think about it, that's where China's, done the lockdown. Our office in Beijing closed. People actually got stuck where they at home, because a lot of our employees went home to celebrate the Chinese New Year, and they weren't allowed to travel. So they had to work not just from home, but from mom and dad's home. So and then even more the week of February 9th. Now we begin to see more going on in Asia. Now we begin to see, a little bit of a farther reach the week after. And then all of a sudden we see Italy show up, and look at the dark red in Italy. Now we're going dark red in lots of different places here. We hit Japan, and we're going to, gosh, I don't know why, New Zealand. I hadn't heard about that. And now U.S. is beginning to start their lockdown procedures, lockdown policies going into effect here in March 15th. And here we're up to March 22nd. Basically everywhere in the world is red. March 29th, we're talking dark red. And then, this is as of last week, and you see a whole lot of dark red. Interestingly, you may have noticed the slide, the graphs in China are now are going from, I'm backing up, they're going from a dark red back to a light red, and as things are turning around in China. Real quick look at China. This is comparing what's going on in China for the last 8 weeks to the US and to Europe as an aggregate. So what do you see? Around the end of February, Europe went down, started going down first. So that would be like the Italy and a little bit of Spain impact. US followed that pretty closely, but you'll see if we went back in time, you would see that very same graph. You'll see it in a minute for China. And now what do you notice? Between February 8th and April 4th, we're seeing China go from an occupancy of 10% to 30%. So last week, the occupancy in China, total country, was 30%. Now that would be pitiful at any other given point in time, but when 8 weeks ago you were at 10%, people are pretty excited about 30%, sad as that may be. This slide shows the same exact data, but we've indexed it according to time. So here we've basically, we show you the graphs based upon, but we've changed the time series. So we basically said event plus 1 week, event plus 2 week, event plus 3 weeks. So you can see, those graphs are somewhat similar. Europe has dipped actually a little lower. You see where we are in US, a little higher, but now we're trying to figure out how are Europe and US going to turn around and what the recovery is going to look like. Is it going to look like a China recovery, or is it going to be slightly different? So that's what everybody's trying to theorize and look into their crystal balls for. Now here's where I'm going to pick up the speed a little bit. There is data in here for other people in the world, but some of the slides that I'm going to show you do go back a little bit in time, because this is essentially the worst point in time, or one of the worst points in time, for China. You can see at this point in time, Macau was 90, Beijing was 90, Shanghai was negative 90, RevPAR percent change. So I have, if you need, if you're interested in looking at this data during a time series or what's going on last week, just let me know. But I am in some of these cases showing you the worst point in time. And some of these slides, I'm searching yesterday and the day before. I searched through all of our master decks to pull this all together, and some just had not been updated. So we're doing probably for the industry, we're doing about 5 webinars a day. They're on the STR website. Go to STR website, you'll see COVID impact. We're doing webinars. Now our webinars tend to be pretty specialized. So today I think we're doing one on Southeast Asia and Australia, New Zealand. So they're all over the world, Benelux and stuff like that. So go on that STR website if you want a more detailed update, or just give me a buzz and I'll try to hook you up with that. But you see what's going on in China and parts of Asia. Here is China rebounding, and this is just showing you some market level data for China as things are rebounding. And you see some of the major markets. Beijing is a little slower. It's not on here, but Beijing is a little slower. Here's that China rebound by class of hotel. Interesting data there. You notice right now the mid-scale and economy are sort of outperforming the others. I would expect that would turn around in the future. I think this is still sort of health worker related and displacement related. But there again, some of this too is helping you see the type of data that is available. Now, there's no legend on here because it's spaghetti anyway, but this is showing you compared to what we're looking at in China, this is showing you all the other top countries in Asia. No, these are actually markets. No, it is countries, yeah. And you can see, from a RevPAR point of view, a lot of them are in the 80s, in the 90s. There are some exceptions. If you look at last week and you see that like teal, light blue, green line up there, it's the Philippines. And I was talking to Tina and Vanjie a little bit about that, and they were helping me understand why the Philippines is sort of an outlier there. Interesting stuff to see. Now here's where I'm going to pick the speed up a little bit. Here are the 4 countries that were the first ones to go on lockdown. This data is a little older. I can get you updated data if you need it. Here are the rest of the countries in Asia. Now this is a couple weeks back. It's more serious now. Singapore, Vietnam hit hard, and other countries in Asia as well. Let's go to Europe. Again, this data is a little dated. I'll have some fresher data in a minute, but you see some of the big countries in Asia. You see Italy at this point in time was the big one that was hit. Spain now is significantly down, just like Italy is. Here are markets in Europe, and you can see this is back to occupancy percent change. And this type of graph, the bubbles are the occupancy percent change. So you see Venice negative 97, no surprise. And then the bar is the actual data. So, looking at like maybe a tiny occupancy in Venice. Here's a detail in Venice and Italy if you want it, and you can see, a lot of 80s and 90s in Italy. Here is the rest of Europe, just showing you what's going on. It is not an isolated event, is it? You see Eastern Europe, Russia, Scandinavia, everywhere is hurting. UK, markets in UK, some of those outlier markets are not experiencing it as bad, but places like Dublin, places like London, in the 80s. Mideast Africa, same stuff we're seeing. Big drops in Mideast Africa. Here's a map view of the very same thing with the markets. One of the things that would be concerning to me if I was involved in the Expo 2020 in Dubai, this is data. We collect forward-looking booking data, And that is, this shows you, the amount of reservations so far for the expo, which is in October, is low. If I were involved in that event, I'd be a little worried. Africa, same kind of thing, behind the curve a little bit, but we're seeing negative impacts there throughout Africa as well. So here's occupancy declines for the world, and this gives you countries broken down, and you can see, some are less impacted than others, but a lot of those are in the 80s and 90s. Another type of data that we've been collecting through this event is event cancellations, and we're talking, these are not local events, but these are international events, and let us know if that kind of data would be of interest to you. All right, we're actually doing pretty good. We covered a lot of slides in just 20 so minutes. Let me now relate this and think, here are some things to begin thinking about, especially from a research point of view, or if you're talking about this event in the classroom, here are some things to talk about and to think about. First, I want to cover comparisons and what are people doing now. Everybody in the industry, everybody in these tourism organizations are trying to think back and say, hey, what can we look at to help us potentially understand the future? There's a lot of discussion right now. It's like, hey, is this recovery going to be a V? Is it going to be a W? Is it going to be something totally different? What, different scenarios for different types of hotels, and one scenario for luxury hotels, maybe one scenario for urban hotels. What's it going to look like? And so people at this point are pulling all that historic data to try to identify patterns and try to come up with takeaways, and that's what people are doing. So let me show you a few examples of that, because that could certainly be related to research and also people might want to bring this into the classroom as well. Here, for example, is where people are looking back at the SARS incident, and we're looking at China data, and people originally thought this might be a SARS type recovery. I think that was an initial thought, and I think people are realizing this is a little more serious, and it's going to take longer. Notice the timing there when WHO issues an alert, and then WHO then says it's contained. That was a 6-month recovery. I think people are feeling like that's a little too optimistic. Now we're looking at U.S. data, and we're looking at economic cycles. This not brand new. This has happened before, but we go back and look at the prior industry cycles, well, all the way back to '94, and then 2001, and then 2009. It's funny because I remember people noticed each downturn was deeper than the downturn before, and I remember people joking about the fact that we could never have a deeper downturn than 2009, and I'm afraid they're going to be wrong. So so you can see where we're at in terms of cycles. So what are people doing now? They're going back and looking at prior cycles. If you look at this graph, the light purple is the 9/11 downturn, and the dark purple is the 2009 downturn. And what are people looking at? Now, this is just one metric. This is average daily rate, but what do you see when you see those two different graphs? Well, there's some really interesting observations. If if we could all talk easily, I would throw out the question, but let me throw out a few observations that I'd make. Look at the light purple. 9/11 was more of a dramatic type downturn, because everybody watching on TV as buildings fell down and airplanes crashed. So big impact immediately, and you see that light purple went down dramatically, reached the bottom, and then recovered. So 12 months to the bottom of ADR. Now we could look at that in terms of RevPAR and occupancy, but from an ADR point of view, 12 months to bottom out, 24 months to recover. Different than the economic recession of 2009, where there was more of a gradual downturn. But look at the timing: 19-20 months to reach bottom, 37 months to go back up. Now, in my estimation, I would think that we're going to be closer to the light purple in this situation than the dark purple situation, but it's a great thing to talk about. Notice the ADR declines. This is showing it on a monthly, this is monthly data, where the data we're looking at here is running 12-month. Monthly data does, there's more distortion, but look at cycle 1, big drops in ADR immediately, but notice 12 months, month 12, we're back in positive territory compared to cycle 2. Now, so those are examples of some of the comparisons people are doing. One thing that people are looking at is when you're trying to compare data, there's all kinds of other variables and things that you could factor into any kind of research you're doing. Something people are looking at is the number of rooms that are in construction. One of the unfortunate situations in 2008, 2009, as the economy went down, there were a huge number of rooms that were in construction. Well, now jump up to 2020, we're at that same peak in terms of rooms under construction. So nobody's really thinking about what's going to happen to all these hotel rooms that are in construction. I'm sure people are thinking about it, but it would be a research opportunity. You take a place like Nashville with 100 rooms in the pipeline. What, that's what's going to happen there. Here I'm bringing in more comparison stuff, and I'm bringing in some economic data. We work closely with Tourism Economics, which is a part of Oxford Economics, and they're releasing a fair amount of economic data. One of the things, obviously, the economic impact will be greater than the great financial crisis, so that's some of their data. If you need to talk to somebody from Tourism Economics, or if you need to tap into some of that data, let me know. I'll be glad to help you. But this is just looking at the GDP drop will inevitably be higher than in 2009 as a comparison point of view. Here's just revenue recovery. Now this gets into profitability, and don't forget we do have profitability data, and this is looking at it from a profitability point of view, GOPAR, RevPAR, and what are the potential impacts of this. This is looking at 2009, but keep in mind I said hopefully this is going to be a little quicker, more like 2001 than 2009. Another thing that I thought was interesting that I wanted to throw out as a research possibility. I was reading an article yesterday about how willing will hotels and destinations be to welcome back the Chinese traveler. And that's, if anybody wants that article, let me know and I'll send that to you. But that's an interesting concept, and look at the difference between 2003 and 2019, the reliance upon the Chinese traveler. And so that's 3 times. I mean, it's not huge in the US, but it's 3 times what it used to be. If it was, and somebody did stats, if just, if the Chinese traveler just dropped out of that, how many millions of rooms and dollars would that would be negatively impacted in just in the US. So that's something to think about as far as the future is concerned. I'm sorry, I'm going fast. Let me stop. Are there any questions that people think of now? Hold on, let me jump to, I haven't been tracking chat here too well. I'll pick up the chat in a minute when I stop sharing the screen. Let me cover some lessons. Yes, Jeff.
Steve, I'm sorry, I had to get to my little button here. Has there been any conversations about hotels that have closed and are likely to stay closed because of their financial condition? I've heard of a couple of hotels in Boston, pretty nice, pretty good hotels that, just given their equity situation, are going to have to stay closed.
Yeah, the closure data is interesting, and we've had to collect that very carefully from all the companies that we're working with. The closure data is critical because what we're doing now is when we're computing, and this is mainly for our customers, when we're trying to show occupancy to Marriott and Hilton, we want to show it 2 ways. We want to show it based upon all the hotels that were open, you know, as of January 1, but we also want to show it as of hotels that are open right now. And there have been a lot of closures. We track those closures. I get reports every morning that show closures in every country of the world, every market. I get it on a brand level detail, and obviously that's confidential. The companies are honestly sensitive when it comes to that closure data, because the last thing, you know, a big company, you know, some of these big companies want is, hey, Marriott stockholders, you know, X number of thousand, you know, X number of our hotels are closed. So, but don't worry about stock prices. So, so they're very sensitive to that. We have that data. Now, there was a huge number of hotels closed in China at the worst point of the downturn, at the worst part, you know, when they were at below negative, when they were below 10, and a surprisingly large number of those hotels have come back, even though we were hearing from a lot of people that, nah, these hotels will never reopen. That's not what we're seeing, but in China anyway. But yeah, I mean, that is a conversation point. If we have any closure data that we can release, we'll let you know about that. And but it's critical, and you know, we're hearing from people too that hey, hotel may not reopen. I just, you know, same with restaurants. I just read an article yesterday. Logan's doesn't expect to reopen. Logan's Roadhouse doesn't expect to reopen, but we'll have to see. So we are also producing a huge amount of data for the government. So we're working really closely. That's a hat that somehow I gained in the midst of this. We're producing data for American Hotel and Lodging Association, for U.S. travel. We're you know, oh, there's a briefing today for the Secretary of Commerce, and so we're pumping data to NTTO, National Travel and Tourism Organization, and trade.gov. So, you know, obviously now, and even in that data, the closure data is very sensitive. So, so we're, you know, if I learn more about that, I'll let you know. Good question, Jeff. Sorry, didn't mean to be long-winded in the answer, but it is an important issue. Any other questions that you think of now? Let me jump into lessons to learn, and this, of course.
There is a question, Steve, on Latin America in the chat.
Oh, good. So sorry. Yeah, I have great slides on Latin America. Shoot me an email and I'll get them to you. We have Latin America, and Caribbean, Mexico, Canada. I didn't share slides on that, but remind me of that, and I'll try to get them in there. And again, if you find this helpful, we could do another webinar like this, you know, 3-4 weeks from now, and because obviously this is changing, you know, so dynamically. We could do this again, and I apologize. I didn't mean. I tried to get every area of the world, and sure enough, I skipped one. I missed one. So my apologies. Oh, hi, Monica. I'm sorry. I knew who asked that question. So, and we're doing good webinars. So if that was Monica who asked, or somebody else, drop me an email and I'll get you that. Have you attended any of the STR webinars?
No, this is my first one.
Okay. Patricia is doing webinars on a regular basis for Latin America. So if you go to the STR website, just str.com, right now there's a, you know, on the home page there's a button for COVID update. Click on that COVID update. You're going to see upcoming webinars that, you know, people from our offices all over the world are doing. They're more localized. So that's where, you know, gosh, I think she did one on, you know, just a couple cities. So they're at the point now, they've done a fair number of general webinars, and now they're doing more localized webinars. So, you know, Iberian Peninsula, you know, what's going on in Spain and Portugal. So yeah, if you have interests, check that out too. But don't hesitate to let me shoot me an email, and I'll try to get you stuff too.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was just talking to Patricia a minute ago. Thank you.
Oh, good, good.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Let's look at lessons to be learned, and that's you know, there again, that's where we're thinking more about brainstorming and ways we can help the industry. From lessons to learn, look here. We're back with segmentation data. Now, remember, that's group and transient data. We're looking at group and transient data. This would be in 2009, so this is coming out of the most recent recession. And look at the difference from an occupancy point of view. What do you notice? The light blue bars are the transient demand. So obviously that was impacted, but notice in the first couple months, transient demand was not down as far as group demand. Well, that makes total sense because, you know, businesses stop traveling, they stop having conventions, they cut back. So group demand, the conferences and the conventions are going to be more impacted. Now keep following that. After 7 months, what do you notice about transient demand? Boom, we're back into positive territory. So didn't take long. What, you know, and basically we say, hey, if I'm not laid off, and you know, I'm still traveling now. I have some slides on this. The nature of my travel may be differently. I may not be going to Disney World. I always joke about going to Gatlinburg. Gatlinburg during 2009 was the only submarket that never went negative. Every other submarket in the world went negative except for Gatlinburg, because drive to destination, cheap place, go see Dollywood, and do the we call it the boardwalk in the sky in the mountains, and it's sort of redneck, but easy to get to. Take the family there, 2-hour drive instead of a 2-hour flight or a 20-hour drive. And so, you know, that's an important thing to be thinking about. Those types of hotels are going to be important as well. So the group hotels are going to be more impacted and coming back later than the other ones. Now, this is the ADR perspective of that, and you see why. One of the reasons a transient comes back quicker is hotels tend to discount the ADR for transient business more, and you can see some of those significant discounts. When you start seeing -15, -20% off ADR, hey, then I may go to you know, yeah, I may be tempted to take my vacation and go somewhere that I wouldn't have normally gone. So you're looking at that from two perspectives, but important lesson to learn. Here's another important lesson to learn. This came up in 2009, caused huge headaches for hotels. This is actual ADR, group versus transient. Look what happened about 6 months into the last downturn. What do you notice here? Normally, if you look, you know, at the very beginning and even at the end, normally, how do ADRs compare? Transient ADRs are obviously higher than group ADRs. Why? Because the hotel's going to give the group a special discount to, you know, to bring their convention to our hotel. But then 6 months into it, what happens? You'll notice because of the significant discounting of the transient ADR, come around month 6 or 7, transient ADRs are actually lower than group ADRs. And then what happened? The group sales manager at the hotel would get the call from the group, you know, from the group, the person, you know, making the reservation, say, hey, my members are telling me that they can go online and get a lower ADR than the super special discounted ADR you gave me 6 months ago. And all kinds of conflict and good proactive group salespeople were going out. They were either lowering the group ADR, giving them even more so they wouldn't walk, or figuring out how to add in and give them all these benefits. Hey, now we'll give you free breakfast. Hey, now we're going to give you free coffee break. So important thing that we need to remember, and this is going to happen, again, we're just a couple months away from that. But again, a lesson to be learned. Does that make sense to everybody? I heard stories about groups, calling in like, 2 weeks before the conference and saying, look, you gotta lower ADRs or we're walking. And I still remember doing a presentation at the Maryland Hotel Association. This hotel said, I just picked up a conference with 500 people. They're coming 2 weeks from now. So, and of course they were glad to get that business, but they gave them the discounted rate. I don't know how contracts work there though. So anyway, another important lesson to learn, domestic versus international. This looks at it, domestic versus international trends after the SARS outbreak. You see a big drop in international travel compared to domestic travel. Again, that's going to be something we're seeing here. So, instead of, my summer vacation, instead of going to Italy, I may be going to Florida, so that's going to be coming around as well. Here's another look at that, domestic versus international. This is data from our friends at Tourism Economics. We work with them on all of our forecasting stuff. And here's another look during 2008, 9, 10, 11, domestic versus international. I'm going to finish up with some good news. Try to find some bright spots here. First one, and this is back to US data. At this point in history, people are traveling more than they ever have traveled before. I'm showing you simple, just room nights. And if you look at where we're at in 2020 and 2021, the hotel industry is selling more room nights before the virus than they ever have in history. So lots of people are traveling, and that's what they're used to. Obviously, this is the different circumstances. Occupancy for the total US, 66.4, has never been higher. Now, it's going to drop a little bit, of course, but it is, it is never, we're at a high spot before this event. This is a good slide that compares 2007 and 9. Look at occupancy. The peak in 2007 was 62.8. A -8 drop in occupancy brought it down to 54.6. That was what happened between 2007 and 9. Now look, that same thing happens in 2019, but notice we're starting at a high of 66.1. So with a -8 drop to that, we're still, getting close to 60. Now the drop could be higher, and but the end result is still going to be higher than what it was before, so hotels are still going to be making money. These are two different travel intention surveys. One's done by the Conference Board and Tourism Economics. The other one is done by STR. If you look at 2021, January 2020, in the first bar graph, and you're just looking at January data, this is saying percent planning to take vacations in the next 6 months. Here's a survey we do in China, and more travel, and this was at March 10, really after it. The Chinese traveler, 50% of them want to travel more than they did prior to in the last 12 months. So travel intention at an all-time high. I was joking about that. There have been a couple good articles out about that. Some I think have been a little too optimistic, but there's a lot of pent-up demand, everybody's thinking. So hopefully that's going to explode soon. GDP, Oxford Economics, Tourism Economics, they're talking a little bit about, is this a short recession or a long recession? And so, they're hoping and they're thinking that this might be a more rapid bounce back than in 2009. Domestic travel, always rebounds higher, or quicker. And but that's important. Think about think about markets in the U.S. and which ones are going to bounce back. You know, think about the, I had a slide in there for luxury resorts and showing the fact that they bounce back so quickly. I missed that. But again, another important thing is think about our students as they're getting ready to look around, you know, going to the urban location, working at a meeting group hotel, probably not as much opportunity, but, you know, head them to the beach. I had, Allie. I was talking to Allie at University of West Florida. You know, some of those boutique-y, smaller beach locations, man, those people could be seeing, you know, hopefully, if we're lucky, they could be seeing some quick recovery type things. So at Allie from University of West Florida. So anyway, that is it for me. I just want to let you know how, you know, let us know how we can help you. There are a couple slides in here. We'll get these out to you. This just reviews all the different types of hotel data that's available for you to use for research, student projects, or use in the classroom. I've shown you a lot of examples of that, so I think you should get that. The STR blog, the COVID-19 blog is at the very bottom, point 9. So go there if you want to keep updated. Those updates will be on a regular basis. We'll try to maybe get back together and do this again. Here, and Jeff will sort of lead a discussion on research-related opportunities, and here we have a bunch of those things that we can talk about in a minute. We've sent out emails, and I think all of you are on our mail lists, but we've taken our CHIA training totally online. Our CATA training is totally online. So if your professors need help when it comes to offering online training, both of those are available to do with your students totally online. We can talk to you more about that. There are other courses that we're considering bringing online as well. So just let us know if you need to. We are still, many of your schools have been involved in our market study competition, which we do in New York in November. We are still planning on that. So just wanted to let you know a survey is going to go out shortly, and you know, a lot of great insight on hotel news now as current events have become more front and center. Don't hesitate to let us know if we can help you in any way. And I'm going to turn things over now to Jeff. And Jeff, you want to, I can back up to some of those, some of that data-related responsibility, because we wanted to take a little time. First, wanted to see if there are any questions before I turn things over to Jeff. And I'm going to go ahead and jump into chat. And I'm going to stop sharing the screen for a minute and jump into chat to catch up with everybody. There you go. Thank you, Suzanne. Any questions? Feel free to unmute if you have a question. If not, we'll turn things over to Jeff and you know, see if we want to talk, if we want to talk a little bit about research and brainstorming.
Thanks, Steve. If you could go back to that slide that you had up a moment ago, I'd be interested to hear what people are thinking relative to potential research opportunities. What are some of the research questions that you might be interested in posing? We've got a small little group here, so I think we could go ahead and unmute if you're so if you'd like to. I think one of the things I'm most interested in is that comparison that you with us so far, Steve. And you know, maybe it'll have to be a little bit backward looking. But one of the notes I made was you know, GOPAR versus RevPAR indices in the various hotel types. I think that's going to be very interesting to see. And then compare that to length of time for recovery. I don't know if I heard you say this today, or maybe you said it yesterday, or I heard you say it some other time. But at this particular point, the hypothesis is that luxury hotels are going to recover faster than some of the other hotel types?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have some slides on that that can help you see that, but they always come out of a recession quicker. And so, when it clearly, when you're thinking about having your students go out and look for jobs, places like the Broadmoor, places like, the Greenbrier and Blackberry, those, especially think about it, those are in markets that are close to big cities. It'll be drive to for a lot of people. Those are the ones that could potentially be coming out of this really strong. Will it happen in July? Time will tell. But it could be. And interesting. I saw I saw some one or two of these hotels that seem to be making big plans and for as early as June and July, and so that's definitely something to look at. I can get before I send out this deck, let me get a couple of those luxury slides and add them into the deck to send out with everybody.
I think would be all. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I heard somebody there.
It was Ruth, but go ahead, Jeff.
No, please go ahead, Ruth.
I was just curious if you're seeing any indication, let's just say come August, here being on the East Coast, people love to head to the beach, whether it be the Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina, Jersey beaches. Just curious whether or not, even Long Island, if you're seeing any indication that if there's a trend that everyone might be heading there if we get this the stay-at-home lifted.
Yeah, Ruth, that would be awesome to look at. What I'd love to see is, go back to the prior two cycles and see, and a couple people have done the Atlantic beaches, East Coast beaches. And for you could focus on, Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia. You could go to North Carolina if you wanted to, and just study in prior cycles, how did those beaches, how quickly did those beaches recover? You could get that data by class of hotel. So you could see, was that somebody like Ruth going to the beach who's going to stay at the poshest hotel in Virginia Beach? Or was that, Ma and Paul go into the economy hotel? You hear what I'm joking at, but all kinds of interesting things that we could then use to hypothesize what's going to happen at the beach coming up. And the cool thing is, with the daily data, you could get that and actually see it happen. And if you theorize that, hey, here's what I think is going to happen, you could be looking at that daily data on a regular basis and say, hey, look at last week, man, they're up. People are doing that in China right now. They're interested. Remember that Sanya is the big resort location in China. So everybody's looking at Sanya to see, when are these Chinese people going to start going to the nicest resort there, and good idea.
Okay.
And some of the management companies are also kind of looking at their hotels in the tougher locations and trying to use that to predict the next wave. So, for example, talking to a gentleman from management company that has a number of hotels in New York and in Massachusetts, they're essentially saying, okay, well, we're learning a lot about what's happening in New York. We know it's going to move toward Boston, or the waves are different, if you will. And so we expect to be able to, make some predictions just based on, healthcare behavior, consumer behavior, et cetera. And they're planning. And I think we could expand that across the United States.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Jeff. Think about it. If Kathy wants to go on vacation this summer, would she be more tempted to go to like Kennebunkport in Maine, which is a much more of a rural destination, than she would, Cape Cod or Martha's Vineyard? I would tend to think that, Kennebunkport would seem to be less, less vulnerable, less threatening. So you may see big pickups in more rural locations. That's sort of what I was chatting with Allie about. Instead of people going to Miami in Florida, they may be more apt to go to Destin and these smaller places, and that would be cool to track over time.
You know, I think I might try to get in touch with you or Melaine or Dwayne, because I think that's a very similar scenario that we would see here in the state of Michigan. Now, the governor has extended our, state of emergency and things like that, but we rely very heavily on Northern Michigan golf, Northern Michigan Ma and Pa resorts, probably to what happens on the East Coast with a lot of the beach locations. But there are a lot of people that go up north from Detroit, from Lansing, Ann Arbor, Grand Rapids, et cetera. And I could see that very same thing happening with us.
Yeah, I mean, that family in those types of areas, maybe they had been planning to go to, the New Jersey beaches. Hey, instead of going to New Jersey beaches this year, let's go to North Michigan and get something a little more remote.
Right.
You made me think of somebody from Ball State is getting data for us. What he's doing is he's getting data on a county level and looking at performance on a county level, and then correlating that. He had county level virus cases, so he's correlating the cases in a county to the performance in a county, just to try to be relevant there. Lots of different people. Search data. That would be an interesting correlation as well. It's funny because Rob Torres is head of travel. If we have when we have an ICRE conference, he was scheduled to speak, but this would be an awesome time to try to. And we've done this before with him. I can show you the last paper we did with Google, correlating search data with performance data, and what we found there was that's normally a 3-month correlation, except when you come to summertime, it's a 6-month correlation. Now, now people are already looking at that in China right now, and they're seeing a huge jump in travel-related search data in China right now. And how is that going to correlate once people are feeling a little more confident? Boom, they're going to be out there quick, and lot of just so many possibilities when it comes to research and absolutely. Just let us know if we can help in any way as you're dreaming those things up, or a lot of you are going to go back and chat with your faculties. If they come up with great ideas, just let us know too.
Fantastic. Steve, maybe you want to talk to some of those folks that, and we could take this offline, but we ought to talk to some of our folks that we've got planned for July conference and see if there may be some opportunities to do some quick hitting webinars as part of our webinar series with ICRE, and see if we could work something out that way. I think that would be really powerful and helpful too. No,
that's a great idea. I hadn't even thought about that, but of course we had Chip Rogers from AHLA. He's a pretty busy guy right now, so he may be harder for him to carve out time to do that. But but somebody like Rob might be able to, so that would be a good thought. I'll be glad to reach out.
That'd be fantastic.
So Steve, thank you. I'm particularly interested on the economic data. So should we just email you, or what is the process?
Yeah, email me with your interest level. I may honestly turn that over to Dwayne and let him follow up. But shoot us an email and we'll be glad if we can work in any way. Also, if there's any interest on the CHIA and the Kata, we're having people offer those now that have never done it before. Just because everybody needs something to do online, or any of the other things. If you want to pilot any of those other things with us, just let us know. We're more than glad to work that. We have you know, we're trying really hard to make it as easy as possible. So even somebody like Jeff could do this in his class. So yeah, total no rocket science required.
Hey, Steve, while we're talking about it, I want to touch base with you offline. Some of our faculty are going to be meeting up later this afternoon, 3:30 Central Time, to discuss both certifications. So, you know, if there's an opportunity for you or Dwayne to maybe chime in or jump in on our conversation, I think that would be excellent.
Now, we would be glad to just send us an invite, and it may be Dwayne, if that's okay, but just send us an invite and we'll definitely, one of us will join you.
Terrific. Thank you.
Good to hear and see everybody else, and you know, this makes us look even more forward to seeing everybody in person, giving somebody, if it becomes socially acceptable to still give people a hug, there'll be a lot of hugs next time we get together. But somebody was saying hugs and handshakes may now be socially unacceptable. So who knows? Hopefully not.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Steve.
All
Our
right.
pleasure.
Be safe, everyone.
Thank you, Steve.
Take care, all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Hey, Jeff and Kathy.
Yeah.
Hey, and hi, Monica. I was just going to say, I think that went well, and you let me know if you want to repeat that sometime in the future. I mean, the stuff is changing on a regular basis, and so 3 weeks from now, it could be a totally different story. We could be, you know, we could be more optimistic or more pessimistic than we are today. So you just let me know. We'll be glad to do that.
Honestly, Steve, I think we ought to set that up. I think, you know, depending on your concerns. Hi, Monica.
Hi, sorry. Well, I'll talk to
Oh,
Steve later.
No, Monica, I was going to say, and Monica, if we can do something special, you're talking to Patricia, so you guys may have already covered this, but if we can do something special in Latin America, let us know. I know we were planning to come down there for ConPet, and I think that's still, you know, nothing's changed there. I've been in touch with Roberto, but it would be neat to do, you know, maybe we do a webinar focused on Latin America and bring you in, Roberto, and some of the good schools down there, just to, you know, talk about the Latin America perspective. There's so many interesting spots that that deserve more attention. Somebody was talking yesterday about the Caribbean, and you know, I mean, that's an interesting research opportunity there. You know, some of those, there's just so many interesting possibilities.
Oh yeah. Okay, so I'll talk to Patricia, but yeah, we definitely want to do a, you know, a webinar potentially at the end of next week or 2 weeks from now.
Oh, good.
Yeah, South America. God, you know, the situation here is apotheosic. It's tremendous what's happening here, and you know, hotels are empty, but they're thinking about, you know, lowering rates as soon as they come back, and I think that's the worst they can do, because the comeback is never going to happen. But so we need you and Patricia to tell them.
Yeah, and of course we're tell Patricia, don't lower your rates. Yeah, and then we
exactly.
then we get the government shutting down STR. But
okay.
You know, the best we can do in situation is to work with people like you and show what happens when you do discounting. And Jeff, that's another great idea for you know, for a research opportunity, because, you know, hotels are just so prone and so tempted in a situation like this. Just cut the bottom out. You saw the transient ADR slide that went down to -20, and obviously you're as, you're as, these hotels are in a tough situation. They're as lucky as their stupidest competitor. And when the stupidest competitor drops their rates to -25, they're screwed and say, okay, well, I'll just, I'll compromise and just drop to -20. It's like, great. And now everybody's losing money. And that's why it takes, 24 or 37 months for ADR to go back. And,
one of the things.
This is not a rate-driven market. It's a fear-driven market right now. I think it's fear first, economy second, and rate third.
ADR is not an issue. Yeah. I mean, ADR shouldn't.
I've actually, we've talked to a couple of revenue managers, an area director of revenue for Hilton and a regional revenue director for Hersha Hospitality. And they both said that they have learned from 2008 and are really hesitant to show that fear factor that they did in 2008, and they're becoming more segmented, if you will, in terms of where they're dropping rate and by how much. So some of those slides that you brought up, spot on with the revenue management behavior vis-a-vis discounts and the strength of the discount. So, yep.
Yeah, it's a great point, Jeff, and it makes me think ahead. We do that hotel data conference in August, and at this point, we're still hoping that's going to go on. We have not canceled that, and that's where the hotel data conference attracts all the revenue management people in the industry, as well as all the strategic people and the developers and tourism research people. But that'll be really interesting to talk with them at that point in time. I know they're on that, and but it'll be interesting. Those meetings and those panels will take on a totally different nature.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll say goodbye. I have to go.
Monica,
Sorry.
all the best. Hey, let us
Good
know
to
if we
talk
help.
to you, Monica.
I know you're doing okay on the chia. If you want to talk any about the kata, don't hesitate to let us know too.
Any about what?
The kata, that's the advanced analytics above the chia.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
okay.
Well, and Monica,
Wonderful.
I sent you a note in chat. If you want to send me the link to any of your webinars, we can post them on the iCRE website.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Take care. Bye.
bye, Monica. All the best.
Take care. Bye.
I've got a happy puppy.
Somebody's
No
dog
kidding.
is going nuts.
Great job, Steve. And I was thinking, as we started this conversation, it seems to me that it would be a good thing, whether it be every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, to have, and if you want to do it on Fridays, given the circumstances of the data as you described it, I think that would be excellent. And truth be told, when we get this uploaded to the iCRE website, I'm going to send my revenue management students to it. So I think it's good stuff.
Yeah, no, I think it would be good. I'm looking at the calendar here real quick, and if we look ahead, 3 weeks would be May 1. That would be interesting to see. Hey, we looked at the beginning of April.
Yeah.
May 1 would be, Okay, well, Kathy, I'll do another announcement and put that in for May 1.
Terrific.
Okay.
This time seems to work okay for people. Obviously, we'll record it and get it out to anybody who couldn't.
You could probably stop recording now so your file.
Oh, dag nabbit.